Hello Internet, and welcome to another installment of Romney's Reviews. Now, I'm one of the few people that actually liked the first Ghost Rider film. Now, before I get a whole bunch of comments saying how much it sucked, let me explain something. When I first watched Ghost Rider, I had little to no familiarity with the character. The only familiarity I had with him was like that one episode of the Incredible Hulk animated series in the 90s, and that was about it. So I literally knew nothing about the character. But after watching the film, it got me interested, and so I started doing some research, and I can kind of see why fans would be kind of pissed about the first movie. Things aren't going too well for Ghost Rider in the world of comics either. At the time of this review, the Ghost Rider ongoing series that was recently relaunched has just been cancelled. You can currently find the current Ghost Rider, instead of Johnny Blaze, it's a Nicaraguan woman named Alejandra, in the Circle of Four event running in the issues of Venom. Now many of you are probably thinking, why make a sequel? The first movie was so terrible. Well, Hollywood doesn't really see it that way. The first Ghost Rider film earned over $45 million in its opening weekend alone. And, well, that's a lot of money. In addition to the Ghost Rider ongoing being cancelled, there was also the Gary Friedrich lawsuit. Gary Friedrich sued Marvel and as well as anybody else involved in the creation of the Ghost Rider movie, saying that the merchandising and film rights were returned to him back in 2001. A full 6 years before the Ghost Rider film was released. The lawsuit was settled back in December of 2011, largely in favor of Marvel. With all this bad luck and hate attached to Ghost Rider, it makes you wonder if a sequel is even worth it. Marvel Comics seems to think so. This film is being released under the Marvel Knights imprint, which is a subsidiary of the Marvel Studios brand. The first film released under this imprint was Punisher Warzone, and much like the comic imprint itself, Marvel Knights is meant to handle the more darker, less popular series, and as such is also being kept separate from the main MCU. Spirit of Vengeance takes place 8 years after the end of the first Ghost Rider film. Well, in the sense that Nicolas Cage reprises his role as Johnny Blaze. In the intro sequence of the film, many details have been retconned and changed in order to fit with the new style of this movie. Instead of feeling like a modern Western film, the people behind this, which were the people behind the movie Crank, decided to give this a more gothic and terrifying feel, instead of a modern Western feel. It even takes cues from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and to a lesser extent Tank Girl in the sense that it incorporates artwork as well as mimicking imagery you would find in a comic book. Since the events of the first film, Johnny Blaze has gone on the run and is now hiding out in the middle of Europe. He's called upon by the gun-toting alcoholic monk Moreau, played by Idris Elba, to rescue/protect a young boy who's being used as a new vessel for the devil. Like I said before, the story is a lot darker and a lot more upfront with how dark it is, so instead of getting it all implied about, oh, he's the devil and all this stuff, they just tell you up front, yeah, he's the devil. Which is something that they kept, although they mention him by name, it's something they kept fairly subdued in the previous film. So this one, they're just more upfront of it. They don't beat around the bush like they did in the first film. We get more of the angst associated with the character, so this doesn't really feel so much like a sequel, it feels more like an X-Men First Class styled reboot, where it could technically fit in with the continuity that was previously established, but it also attempts to start over from scratch should the film prove successful. Now, the acting in this film, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me. I mean, Idris Elba does a good job, basically all the actors do a good job, but Nicolas Cage, this is not one of his best performances. I mean, they definitely really made this story a lot darker, but a lot of the dialogue they gave Johnny Blaze just sounds weird coming from Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage does a good job when he's supposed to be acting insane when he's trying to hold back the writer, but when it comes to the really dark and brooding type dialogue, it just doesn't come across that well. He just can't pull off the dark, brooding, tortured soul. That's just the truth of it. And I can understand they're trying to be consistent and he wanted to come back for the role, but I really think they should have cast someone else as Johnny Blaze if they were really trying to go for a completely different style, much like how they recast for the upcoming Spider-Man reboot. It's just something that the same actor just doesn't really work here, because although the dialogue is written well, it's just his delivery of it is still... It makes it sound even more cliche when it comes from Nicolas Cage. That's the best way I can put it. This film's been getting a lot of negative reviews, and I don't think it deserves a lot of the harsh backlash that it's been getting, because although it's not perfect by any means, it's at least being a little more faithful to the source material. It's dark and gritty, really more in the style of the Ghost Rider comics, at least from what I've read. So if you're a die-hard fan of Ghost Rider, chances are you'll find this film a lot more enjoyable than the previous Ghost Rider film, which was more family-friendly. This family-friendly, this is not, no matter what they want to tell you. The effects are improved over the last one, but there are still some scenes where it kind of pulls you out of the movie, where you can just tell it's an effect, and it actually clashes with the style that they established, because there are other scenes where it's stuff that they obviously had to do with effects, but it works more with the style, particularly with the artwork that they splice in with the footage. It's not like they take artwork from the comics like they do in Tank Girl, it's more like a demonic oil painting come to life. On my personal scale, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst, I give Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance a 3 out of 5. It's not a perfect movie, but it's definitely more interesting than the previous film, so chances are I would probably wait for it to come to the dollar theaters before watching it, or for it to come out on Netflix. You don't really need to rush out and see this. Yeah, there's no little funny skit this time, so yeah. Peace out. This next section's for people who are watching this through my YouTube channel. This is not the first episode of Romney's Reviews, this is actually the third. To see the previous 2 episodes, as well as read other reviews and articles, click the link below to visit the Globe's website.